Hello and welcome to the Everything is Black and White podcast. It's time for the Monday show with me, Andrew Musgrove, and a Newcastle United editor, Aaron Stokes. We come into this show on the back of Newcastle's 0-0 draw with Everton down at Goodison Park. Not too much to write home about, but an improved performance away from St James's Park, which is something we will definitely take. Potentially 2 points drop. We'll get into that. Plenty of other stuff to talk about, including the 3-year anniversary since the new owners or the current day owners took over from Mike Ashley. We'll have your questions as well. So if you're watching live on YouTube, do get into the comments. We appreciate your support as always. Aaron, how are you keeping? Are you well?
Well, yeah, enjoyed a quiet weekend, my weekend, and all the action in front of Jordan Pickford's goal was about the same. Not a lot happening. A frustrating afternoon on Saturday, wasn't it? Frustrating evening. A good performance that, I don't know about you, feels a little bit like a defeat to me.
It does in many ways because it was improved defensively. What we saw was a little bit like what we saw against AFC Wimbledon, really, where they had so much of the ball, but they just struggled to break the opposition down. And I think what we can say is compared to the performance against Fulham and really compared to the performances we've seen this season, Man City aside, you can say it's much improved. But that only gets you so far. If we're sitting here in a few weeks' time saying the same, even if we picked up, a point here, a point there, we need to see them start to pick up wins. And if you're an ambitious side with hopes of getting back into the Champions League, which Newcastle United are, a 0-0 draw at Everton, who, let's be honest, are pretty abysmal, it's not good enough.
It was a poor Everton performance and a team, an Everton team very much there to be got at. I mean, that back four, James Tarkowski, we'll talk about the penalty, but I think just in general, I feel like Newcastle maybe dodged a bullet there by not going from when he left Burnley. I mean, Ashley Young still going at 39, James Garner, a central midfielder at right back, and Michael Keane, who isn't in the best form either. It just adds to the frustration that Newcastle couldn't get past them. But on another day, they win that game 2-0. Anthony Gordon scores from the spot, and he scores that easy chance. It was those big moments where Newcastle needed to step up, and they just couldn't take those chances in front of goal.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. Is it too simplistic to say on another day they win that game? So really, we can't have too many complaints. It is just the fine margins of taking your chances. I mean, expected goals, Newcastle 2.05 to Everton 2.67. So Newcastle created chances. They should have scored enough goals to win that game. Or is there something a little bit deeper that we have to look at here?
I mean, I think we will look deeper. Whether we need to or not, I think is another question, because I think Newcastle created. It's not like we're coming away from Goodison Park thinking, like there was at Fulham where they didn't really create enough chances and they weren't, getting in good positions. I think they were just missing something on Saturday, missing a little bit of creativity, missing some poise in front of goal. I mean, I know we'll get on to Gordon ultimately, but I actually thought Gordon had a good game. He just couldn't finish those chances, and ultimately that's what's cost Newcastle in the end.
Yeah, he had a good game considering where he was playing. It's not a strong point, but I think all the issues that we've got up top with Wilson and Isak missing, and we've discussed it at length on the podcast, so we'll not go into too much detail, but they were kind of reaffirmed against Everton on Saturday. They were just missing that instinctive striker. Anthony Gordon has the one to kind of go towards the ball. What you actually need when the ball comes into the box is someone who's just, he's ready to pounce, and Gordon just doesn't seem to have that. That's not his fault. Ideally, you want Gordon on the wing, and he's running at fullbacks like Garner, like Ashley Young. I mean, that in a foot race, there's only one winner there, and at the moment, his levels are being hurt because Newcastle United now have not got the options that he should have, to play a striker. And I suppose that leads on to the main question that everybody's asking: why on earth are you not playing William Osula? Maybe not from the start, but with 15 minutes to go, and I know the substitutions had already been made, but 15 minutes to go against a defence, as you've explained, very poor defensively, aging defence. William Osula, raw, bit of speed about him, a bit of strength. Okay, he might not have had the best outing against the FC Wimbledon, but I saw enough to think there's definitely something there to work with. You should be planning your game around, if need be, bringing him on with 50 minutes to go to try and win you that game.
Yeah, I'll be totally honest. I'm a little bit baffled by the Osula situation because look, we know he's a project signing. We know he's a signing for the future, and we know that Eddie Howe, maybe doesn't trust him at this level yet. But as you've just explained there, Newcastle United are on top of this game. They're dominating the game. They're creating chances. They're exploiting a tired, aging back line. You're really telling me, Eddie, that you can't trust Osula for 15 minutes to maybe try and put himself about them and get a goal? I couldn't understand that the substitution he made where he brought Barnes off. Taking Barnes off, fine, but why are you not moving Gordon out to the left and bringing Osula on? Why are you bringing on Alma on to then put Jacob Murphy left wing?
But the issue is always started by the fact that you've got Gordon up top. Okay, he's played there before, but then you've got Barnes playing centrally for a wee while as well. It's just a very weird position to be in when you have got a raw and inexperienced, but you've got a striker there.
But and as you say, I think we've seen enough from William Osula. And obviously, look, Eddie Howe will turn around and say, look, I see him every day. I don't want to rush him in too soon. He's not ready for this level. He played 21 games in the Premier League last season. This is not a player they've plucked from the EFL who's never experienced top flight football before. Yes, admittedly, I'm not going to say he was banging the goals in the Premier League. I don't think he hasn't scored in the Premier League for Sheffield United last season. But you're really telling me that you would prefer to just shuffle your front three around and play players out of position rather than play a striker for 15, 20 minutes of a game you're dominating where you need a goal. And I think with Osula, how is he going to get to that level if he's not playing in games like that? He came off the bench against Fulham for, I think it was 7 minutes. Newcastle are, chasing the game. Eddie's got to have a little bit more trust in him. I think he had a very good performance against Wimbledon. Let him back that up in the Premier League, and for whatever reason, Howe just doesn't think he's there yet.
I mean, Howe's got a history of taking his time with players, but I think what went before with the likes of Bruno, I mean, we all think back to Bruno and War Flags having that display ready, and he started him on the bench. I think it was against Everton, ironically enough. But he had the luxury of having, I think it was Joe Linton, Longstaff, and Joe Willock in the form of their lives. Like, had Bruno come in and started that game straight the day after he'd signed, or whatever day it was, people would have been a little bit put out, I think, because the midfield three were performing so well. He hasn't got this luxury this time. Like, he hasn't got a striker who's banging in the goals. Yeah. So it's going to be interesting, because if we get to the end of the season, I know it's really easy to say this, but Newcastle miss out on Europe by a point or 3 points here. Do you look back and think, well, that game against Everton, you had a striker there. Like, why didn't you just roll the dice?
I don't think we'll be looking back.
It's a big leap, but my point being, like, Saturday was a missed opportunity.
And look, as we said on the pod last week, or I said a couple of weeks ago, Newcastle United, if they want to get top four, which is a big ask, they are fighting for one place. It is going to come down to points. It is going to come down to goal difference. It's going to be so close between Newcastle, Man United, Chelsea, Spurs, and Villa, because the top three are winning every week. They're away. I don't know. I feel for Osula, because I think that game was crying out for him. Didn't understand why we didn't see him. Eddie Howe, as I said, will turn around and say he's a signing for the future. He needs time.
But you haven't got that luxury.
But you haven't got the luxury to do it.
I think when you end up playing Harvey Barnes for a small portion of the game, like we've seen Jacob Murphy play in the same position, surely something's got to be going off in your head, thinking, look, we've got him. Let's just give him a go. I think you've got more chance of winning the game with him up top. Of course, as you said, Howe will argue, I see him, we can, day in, day out, I'm the one making decisions, and we accept that.
I think if Eddie Howe had gone the other way around and he'd brought Osula on for the last 20 minutes and Newcastle didn't get a goal, and let's just say Will Osula missed a chance, I don't think we'd be sat here. Anyone would be saying, why did you bring Osula on? I think it was a win-win situation for Eddie Howe. You bring the striker on the pitch to play in his natural position. You could also then move Gordon to his natural position. You're also aiding Osula's progression after a good performance in midweek. And the fans actually are not going to complain about it. I've seen nobody say, I've seen nobody back Howe's decision on Osula on Saturday.
Because it is interesting. He hasn't featured in the reserve side.
Yeah.
And for me, if he's just training week in, week out without getting any Premier League action, you might as well throw him some competitive action in the under-21s.
I wonder if, and I think it's a question that needs to probably be put to Howe in the next couple of weeks when Wilson returns. I wonder when Wilson's back fit, if we maybe see Osula start maybe not making matchday squads for the senior team so he can play for the under-21s. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw
They
that.
maybe go out on loan in January, but it's a big gamble. I mean, it'd be quite something if we don't see him get many minutes of Premier League football and then he's out on loan in January, because I think you're gambling on Callum Wilson and Isak's fitness, which is no guarantee at all. But I think what would be really interesting is to know the mindset and the process of actually bringing Osula to Newcastle United, because I think we all agree that having Callum Wilson and Alexander Isak and saying they're both going to be fit throughout the season was a big ask, and sadly, those who doubted that would be possible have been proved right. And I just think you've spent 10 to 15 million on this young kid. Whose decision was it? Was it Eddie Howe's and Jason Tyndall on the back of a Jason Tyndall recommendation? Was it someone else's? Paul Mitchell maybe had a little bit of input, Steve Nixon. I think it'd be really intriguing to know who said this guy should be at Newcastle United. Was it they only had 10 million to spend on a striker because they were holding out for Mark Gay to come in, which you would look at it and think that that's probably not the right approach. You should be a bit more flexible in your approach. And actually, the argument would be, well, did they really need a 70 million pound centre back when you needed a right winger and a centre forward? And you look around, and I'm going to mention the name again. It's not because I'm trying to pick up my point, but Delap cost 20 million pounds. Surely there was enough wriggle room to move for someone like him.
But there's absolutely nothing to suggest that Eddie Howe wouldn't have signed Liam Delap
and
said, well, he's not ready. I mean, look at Liam Delap. He's playing in a team that's probably going to be in and around the relegation zone all season. He's absolutely flying. So, look, I know it's different. He's going to be getting a lot more game time. I don't want this to seem like we're digging out Osula or the signing of Osula. I think the signing of Osula looks like a very good one. I think you've signed in a really raw potential player who could go on to be, fantastic further down the line. It goes back to the summer, and again, and I hate the fact we're going back to the summer, but
it was bad.
You've got Callum Wilson out there, out injured in the summer. For about a good month of the summer window that he's not going to be fit until the first international break, the second international break. Surely you're saying, look, well, if we're spending 50 million on a striker, it's got to be someone who is capable of filling in on Isak. And for whatever reason, Howe doesn't think Osula is. Look, we might be sat here in a season's time and think, you know what? How good is it that he kept Osula? You remember what he did with Lewis Hall? He didn't play him, and Lewis Hall, worked on his craft behind the scenes. Trained hard, wasn't thrown in at the deep end, and now he's reaping the rewards of it. So maybe we'll see that further down the line, but for the here and now, I think that game on Saturday was crying out for someone of Osula's talent.
Well, it's really interesting, and I'm going to get into the comments. Plenty of comments coming on YouTube as we are live. Thank you very much. I will read them in a moment. I just want to play you this clip from Eddie Howe's press conference after the game, where he talks about not having the attack up front, and that kind of leads to the point we've just been making on Osula. But here's what Eddie Howe had to say about the game.
90% of it, I think we did look more solid today. That is our best defensive performance of the season, especially when you consider the opponent, because Everton are very difficult to play against. A lot of direct play. One mistake can be fatal against them, whether that's not dealing aerially with the threat or the second ball. Set plays, again, defended really well. So I was really pleased with that aspect of our play. I thought we were much better with the ball today. It was a big step forward. It's the best we've been in sort of the first 2/3 of the pitch. Controlled the game, created the moments. Just the final ball was off. The final action was off. The individual actions were off in that attacking area. So that's the frustration. I mean, we had the defensive part there. We didn't have the attacking part.
So the bit at the end is the bit I want to talk about. He says, I had the defensive part. We didn't have the attacking part. And yet still William Osula is not the answer. I just find that really interesting.
Yeah, look, I don't really know why we're sat here so surprised, because Eddie Howe has been unequivocal.
There's no surprise. Not at all.
Eddie Howe has been very, very consistent with us speaking about Osula. After the select, well, firstly, when they signed him, Howe came out and I've got the quotes here. Financially, it's got to work for us. He's got a lot of work to do. There's areas to his game to develop. He made from the very first press conference, he made it clear that William Osula was very much a player for the future, and he stuck to that. Even on Tuesday night when we spoke to him after Wimbledon, he said, he will only get minutes, that will be dictated by him, how he trains, how he performs. Well, again, we go back to the summer. It's a tricky one. I don't know. I feel like I'm lost for words over it.
We'll get into some of the comments now. Craig says Osula made run after run against Wimbledon with no passes to him, and that's probably the difference that was there against Everton. There was service to the striker. They just couldn't find the end product. Darren says allowing Gordon to take the pen against his old club was a big mistake. Pressure was on, and Pickford just needed to save it. I will ask Aaron about that in a moment. Just have a little look at comments about Osula. Gary says, I'm going to be optimistic, even though I was disappointed after the draw. We lost that game last season. We had no recognised striker. We look solid at the back.
Yeah.
I mean, the whole point about looking solid at the back, they were better defensively. They did control the game, which they haven't done in, would you say, any of the Premier League games this season? Yeah,
I would agree so.
So that's the big plus.
Look, there was big positives to take. I know we just spent the first 10, 15 minutes of this pod, being quite doom and gloom, but there was positives. As Eddie Howe said there, I think it probably was the best defensive performance of the season. We saw Dwight McNeil, who's been quite in form this season for Everton, completely kept quiet. DCL had a few sniffs, but nothing too major. Again, Dan Burn and Fabian Schär both playing fantastically well. The midfield was better, apart from maybe a couple of moments when they could have kept the ball better in the first half. There was positives to take from that game. All that was lacking was a goal.
Gary says Gordon did have a good game, but he lacks a striker's instinct. Good if it's a short-term measure. He's best on the left, better than Barnes on the left. That's where he should play. John says, I'm still concerned that Osula hasn't been used and we're missing our two main strikers. We need to keep Gordon on the wing, even if Osula is not ready. Do you think Joe Linton could play down the middle and Willock on the left? I mean, I wouldn't like to see that, but there's no betting against.
I actually thought that's what he might
do.
I thought he might do that on Saturday when he brought Barnes off. I thought, okay, he's going to move Gordon out to the left and maybe he's going to stick Big Joe up top. But
we've got Graham saying, just think the strikers that have that instinct, and surely Osula could have just been the difference for 15 minutes. Graham says surely Osula should have been given 10 minutes, nothing to lose. So a lot of people who are watching live agreeing and just asking, where is William Osula? And another striker who hasn't been seen since the summer, Garang Kual. Where's Mr. Kual?
Yeah, I'm sure.
Nowhere near the under-21s either.
Yeah, didn't go out on loan, nowhere near the 21s, nowhere near the senior side. Really turned out to be a poor move after promising so much.
So maybe we'll send a search party out for him. So I think Everton probably started the game all right, but then Newcastle had one cleared off the line. Bruno Guimaraes with a lovely effort, and I think it was Ndai. He didn't really know too much about it, and he was very fortunate. Actually goes through his legs and off the back of his heel and away. Then we've got Tarkowski wrestling Sandro Tonali to the ground in an absolutely bizarre move that needed VAR to award the penalty. I don't think you can be too upset at the referee missing it, because he's not really concentrating on that area of the pitch, maybe. And obviously Murphy then puts it over, doesn't he? So thankfully VAR gets it right. But Everton fans were up in arms about it, but no question, he wrestles him to the ground.
If that was Fabian Schär, Dan Burn, steam would be coming out of my ears. I mean, if you want to do that on a Sunday League pitch, try your luck. You'll probably get away with it 9 times out of 10. Why central defenders or defenders in general think they can get away with that in the world of VAR, I've got no idea. And
then argue against it, I didn't do anything.
Yeah. I mean, even when you saw the replays and you saw it sort of slow down, there was real intent from Tarkowski. He was really sort of angry on his face when he did it. Stonewall for me. Yeah, so very good that VAR caught.
The big question, though, is should Anthony Gordon have stepped up to take it? He obviously misses it. It's saved by Pickford. It's not a good penalty at all. Pickford celebrates like a madman, and understandably, given the relationship with Newcastle United fans. The most annoying thing about it is you can see Pickford's already gone to that side, and Gordon just doesn't switch up, and it's an easy save in the end. Like, it's easy for me to say this sitting here, but I do wonder whether, and I know I can hear you saying you're going to argue against us, but just in that arena, and look, Gordon had a good evening, but I just think in that arena, was he the best penalty taker for it?
I think we would be sat here. Let's say Fabian Schär took the penalty on Saturday like he did at Wimbledon, and he tries to roll it down the middle like he did at Wimbledon, and Pickford saves it. We'd all be sat here going, why is Gordon not taking that? He scored against Man City the week before. I'm not buying this that it wasn't the right environment. He would have been so fired up for scoring that penalty against Everton to silence them. And as Eddie Howe said at full time, he is the penalty taker. So yeah, he had to take it. It was a poor penalty. We can all sit here and go, oh, well, was it the atmosphere? Was it the occasion? He had to take the penalty. He missed. He'd be better for the next one.
Yeah, great players do miss penalties every now and then, even the great Alan Shearer. What I did notice in the immediate aftermath of that penalty kick being saved, Bruno Guimaraes running over to him, give him a little rub of the hair just to kind of pick him up, which I thought was really, really important, because I've questioned whether they've got true leadership within that team, true captains, and I do think maybe the armband has got the better of Bruno to a certain degree, but it was really important to see him and Joelinton going over and just comforting Gordon, even just for a second, because that's what true leaders do.
Yeah, absolutely. Very good to see. We've seen it a couple of times this season. We saw during a shootout earlier as well, where they sort of walk towards the player and be sort of a chaperone for them. Yeah, very good to see from both of them, both Bruno and Joelinton. And I actually think, I don't think the penalty miss got to Gordon. I mean, maybe it did in the second half when he missed that chance, but I actually thought he had a really good game. He looked sharp. He looked up for it. He was in for the tackles. Just couldn't take his chances.
We've got Omar saying Schär should have taken it. We've got Darren saying, I agree, Schär should have taken it. Leslie saying it's just a miss, end of. Always needed to take it, in their opinion. We then had a chance for Dominic Calvert-Lewin, which was a great save by Nick Pope. The ball was given away by Tonali midway in his own half, and Everton attacked. Great save, low, hand down by Pope. And then Calvert-Lewin kicks Dan Burn and goes down. Now, in real time, I thought that was a penalty. It wasn't until you watch it after and you see what happened. Great defending by Dan Burn.
Clever defending. I think he knows exactly what he's doing. He's trying to draw that foul. As you say, very, very good stuff from Pope to spare the blushes of Tonali, who give the ball away a couple more times than we're maybe used to seeing him do on Saturday. But good defending. I thought in real time it was a penalty. I actually thought maybe after the first or second replay that it was probably going to get given. But I think, when you see all the angles, it was clear that it was, DCL on Burn rather than the way around.
How do you think the midfield three worked? We were all very happy with how they did against Manchester City. A totally different game against Everton. They had more of the ball. I thought Bruno was a little bit more fluid, a little bit more free. He was able to kind of dictate play with the ball. I don't think Tonali stood out as maybe as we would have expected them to. Our colleague Lee Ryder thought it was Joelinton's best performance of the season. Your take on the midfield trio?
To be fair, I don't disagree with a lot of that. On Tonali, I was a little bit disappointed with him. Thought he gave the ball away just a couple of times too many. He wasn't imposing. He didn't have the same effect on the games he has in the last couple of weeks. Bruno was good. I think we're finally starting to maybe see the best of him. He's just starting to pick up a little bit of form, a little bit of consistency, a little bit of momentum. And I actually thought that was probably Joelinton's best game since Southampton. But the bar's been so low, I don't think it took much for him to actually be, handed that sort of praise.
He looked like the man who was going to score. He was in the box a few times.
He was good going forward down the left. Yeah,
I think. Look, they were good defensively, and I think overall you can say it was a good performance. But the issue is that they only created one big chance with a penalty aside of 68% possession, 656 passes to 310, 853 touches to 510. When you are handed the ball and you're told, come on, then let's see what you can do with it, and you're going up against a side who at very most is going to survive the drop to the Championship, and even then they might be lucky, you've got to be creating more chances, and you've got to be putting the chances that you do create away. And we'll go back to that Gordon chance in the second half where he puts it over. But other than that, they didn't really do too much.
Bruno had that one that he scuffed. He should have done better with. There was chances for them. Miggy had one that he absolutely fluffed at the end as well. So I thought they created enough. I think they just weren't.
Just one of those days.
Yeah, they just weren't at the races in terms of their finishing. Gordon had, as we've touched on, 2 or 3 clear chances to score. Miggy should have done better ways. Bruno should have done better ways. Bad day at the office. Chalk it up as that. Move on.
We talk about the lack of a striker, and we mentioned this man last
we?
week, and we don't do too much. And you give a little bit of an interesting reaction, but I was watching Dominic Calvert-Lewin quite closely. And I thought he was quite impressive.
I think he was 35 million impressive.
He's out of contract though in the summer, which I forgot about. Could you get a little cheeky deal in January?
Do you think he's good enough to be second choice to Isa?
Yeah, I do. I think you cash in on Callum Wilson. You say, look, sell him for 8 million because we can't rely on his injury record. You get Dominic Calvert-Lewin, who looks like he's got past whatever was holding him back. Near enough, 30-odd games last season. He's started this season all right. I think you put him up against Isak to compete with him. You get him for a decent enough price in January. I'm not, obviously they wanted 35, 40 million in the summer, but if you can get him for 15, 20 million in January, or do what some teams do and negotiate that free transfer for the summer, it could prove to be a good deal.
I think that's.
You didn't see anything that you liked on Saturday?
Look, I think Dominic Calvert-Lewin is a run-of-the-mill decent Premier League striker, but I don't think he's a Premier League striker to challenge Alexander Isak in any way. I don't think he's an upgrade on Callum Wilson, apart from the fact that he can maybe stay a little bit fitter than Callum Wilson. I just think for a team that wants to be going forward, I think DCL is. I just don't think he's at the level.
Interesting. Let us know in the comments if you're watching this on YouTube or via email at theaibwpodcast@reachplc.com. Would you like to see Newcastle United sign Dominic Calvert-Lewin? Leslie says, I love the midfield 3 now, feels more structured and a safer unit. Graham says, credit the referee on the incident with Byrne. Dominic, Bruno and Joe Linton were stands out. Graham says, I think the passing needs to be sharper and quicker. That's a match-by-match improvement can be seen, and I think we should stick with the current midfield 3. Agreeing with Graham there, I thought, especially Bruno was looking a little bit more active, a little bit more quicker and sharper.
Yeah, he's definitely picking up a little bit of momentum, definitely.
But I just wonder, Isak injury aside, whether the international break comes at the wrong time potentially, because Eddie Howe described it there as a step forward the performance. So you've had a good performance against Man City, good point. You've had an average performance against the FC Wimbledon, but plenty of changes, you get the win. A much improved performance away from home against Everton, and a game you should have won. Do you want that break coming up now, even though by the time you come back on the 19th, you might have your main man back up front?
That seems like it's one of the only positives, doesn't it? The fact that it gives you 2 weeks essentially to get Wilson and Isak both back. I mean, what does he do when those two are both back? Does he try and fit both of them in? Does he?
I don't think. I don't think he's going to have too much of an issue with that. I'm being quite honest.
I don't think he will. You think Callum Wilson's going to be straight back on the table?
Phil McNulty for the BBC said there's no guarantee that Isak will be back in his view with the whole broken toe issue. So it'd be interesting to see if he's back in time for Brighton. Callum Wilson. I mean, I've just been burned too often. I think even if he's back, how long is it going to be till he's match fit? And then you can just see him. You can see him going on a wonderful purple patch, scoring 4 and 6 or something. And then we are in the middle of December, game's thick and fast, and he's done again. And
I wouldn't disagree.
It just leads me to thinking, just cash in for whatever you can get now. Let's know in the comments what you think. Isak says Dominic Calvert-Lewin would be great backup, great player to bring on as a sub 2. We can't afford someone who is good as Isak, but someone who would complement him, who can stay fit would be great. We've got someone saying, Graham saying, Jonathan Davids from Lille is available for 40 million. Omar says he signed David from Lille and Brian Abermo from Brentford will finish in the top 4. Down says Dominic Calvert-Lewin is another player who can't play a full season. Really interesting. I mean, the international break, what are we looking for over the next couple of weeks? We've got Poe and Gordon in the England squad. We've got anyone else?
Tino and Hall are in the 21s.
Bruno and Joe Linton?
No
Joe Linton.
No Joe Linton. With Brazil and Sandro with Italy are the main ones. And Kraft is back with Sweden as well.
So, I mean, you see, keep their fitness up. It wins under the belt, confidence coming back. But at the same time, I think, Bruno didn't have the best of spells away the last time. Other than the Isak recovery, hopefully, I do fear it's just come at the wrong time.
Yeah, you would have maybe I say that. I mean, is it maybe good that you're not playing Brighton straight away after that comeback yesterday? I don't know. I think, look, as long as they can get through this international break with no further injuries, then they'll be laughing. It looks also, just completely off topic, well, slightly on topic, Sven Botman looks like he's picking up some speed. He's back on the grass. He's
Just
back
take your
in some
time.
light training, which is a very good positive to see. Look, there's only one thing that matters, I think, national break, and it's getting Alexander Isak back. Callum Wilson on top of that is a bonus, but got to get the main bang back.
Let's talk about Miguel Almiron. Played against Wimbledon, was probably the liveliest, but he did come in for a bit of stick. He came off the bench yesterday. You actually put something forward in the office before we came in, which I thought was quite interesting. And I'll let you be the man who decides whether you're going to mention it or not.
I'll mention it. I will put my tin hat on when I do so and expect the pelleters. But I will clarify it. I think if Alexander Isak isn't back for Brighton, I think we might see Gordon through the middle and maybe Miggy back on the right. And the reason I say that is there's only a couple of places in that team that are up for grabs, and right wing is very much one of them. And for as long as Anthony Gordon's not there holding down that place, it's anyone's battle between Murphy and Miggy. And I think in the last 2 games, we've probably seen more of Miggy than we have Murphy. And I wouldn't be surprised if he comes back in.
Interesting, because a lot of people thought he was done and dusted. Howe's not really used him. I think the fact that we're discussing whether it's Murphy or whether it's Almiron, and every other week we've got an answer, again. Reaffirms just where they've missed out on.
Yeah.
And the fact that they definitely do need a striker. And again, someone's already mentioned it, but Mbeumo on the score sheet yet again. And that's the kind of player they need, someone who would actually do a better job, I think, than Gordon up top in that centre role, but also it's just absolute dynamite on the wing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Interesting, though, the whole Barnes-Gordon debate, and you've stuck by your guns with this. You've said, well, if he's not scoring goals, if he's not assisting, what is he doing? Another quiet afternoon for him against Everton.
Yeah, another game that just seemed to pass him by as we're sort of come to expect, But then again, you're sort of hesitant to criticize him too much because, he's in quite a good scoring form. He's impacting games. He's getting Newcastle points. But I think, when it's not going your way and he's not finding the net, there's very little that stands out about Harvey Barnes in this game. Another quiet afternoon. And if I'm honest, I don't think you could really have too many complaints being the first one off the pitch.
How easy is it for a player to accept that I'm just better off the bench? Like, do you think a player will ever just accept that? I mean, obviously, like, for instance, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, who we just knew, you put him on with 20 minutes.
John Duran at the minute.
Yeah. But he's going to, he's just a new deal. He's going to kick up a fuss in the next few months if he's
Is Harvey Barnes better off the bench?
That's the argument.
Maybe so far for Newcastle he has been, but I think that's because we've seen him off the bench probably more than we've seen him start, barring the last couple of weeks. But again, it goes back to the right wing. Harvey Barnes at the minute is probably quite safe on the left because he knows that Gordon's at the minute either playing through the middle, or if he's not through the middle, he's going to be on the right. Barnes has earned that spot for the time being. Whereas if Newcastle had signed a 40, 50 million pound player on the right in the summer, there's absolutely no guarantee Barnes stays in that team.
I think the biggest issue is that in a game like that against Everton, what you want is that driving midfielder, someone who gets the ball and just runs and runs and runs. And look, I still think Harvey Barnes is going to prove to be worth every penny Newcastle paid. But you just can't help but think having an instinctive striker along with Gordon in his best position on the left. And I know Gordon was on the left for a little bit yesterday, but they just seemed to miss that drive in the midfield. They controlled it, they dominated it, they were good in possession, but they missed that person, whether it be Joe Willock, whether it be Gordon, someone just can run at the defence and really stretch
and
it.
They also need goals from midfield. I mean,
Yes.
Look, Bruno, Joel and Tonali are all fantastic. We're not going to say otherwise. But, really, where are your goals going to come from? Across a season, are any of those going to hit 10 goals? Probably not.
I'm just reading here. Hugely significant breaking news. Man City victory as Premier League sponsorship rules declared unlawful, reports Matt Lawton of the Times, which could result in huge news for Newcastle United. Shall we just quickly read through some of the key facts and get your response? So this is via the Times. The rules deemed unlawful because they did not take into consideration interest-free loans from shareholders to the clubs. Likely change in regulations could lead to City striking more lucrative deals and seeking damages from the Premier League. Clubs with high levels of borrowing now in danger of breaching the profit and sustainability rules. Arsenal, City, title rivals have borrowed more. Doesn't make any sense, but have borrowed more than 200 million, making up the entirety of shareholder loans. Premier League stance was backed by Arsenal, Man United, Liverpool, West Ham, Brentford, Bournemouth, Fulham, and Wolverhampton Wanderers. I mean, from Newcastle's point of view, I know we've just heard the news now. We're just trying to read through it. That could be pretty significant in terms of the sponsorship that they could now get from companies owned by the PIF.
Yeah, 100%. You've got to remember why this is so, integral to Newcastle is actually because these rules were brought in after the 2021 takeover to essentially say, look, if you are owned by a country, a wealth fund, anything like this, or any sponsorship deal that your owners try to do with companies that they have an investment in or they own, it's going to come under scrutiny. Now, City have said, right, well, we're going to take the Premier League on. Big ask to do so. They've won it. And now, essentially, in short, it means Newcastle have a lot more freedom now to say, well, we're going to go to the wealth fund and, a lot of Saudi companies that have, connections to that wealth fund. And we're going to try to strike some lucrative deals.
Oh, and that will be being celebrated, one in the boardroom at St James Park, you would think.
Well, very telling there, as that Times article says, Newcastle not on that list of teams that back the Premier League, which just goes to show their stance on it.
Yep, associated party transaction rules were introduced in December 2021 in the wake of the Saudi-led takeover of Newcastle United, which of course happened 3 years ago today. City had argued that rule essentially, was brought in after fear-mongering or because of the Saudi takeover. Now it opens the door to potential huge sponsorship to strike significantly higher sponsorship agreements with associated parties than previously allowed, which is huge for Newcastle United. It really, really could be a game changer. Other clubs could now also seek damages should they believe they have been impacted. So it'd be really interesting to hear from Newcastle United on this. I'm sure whether it's through official channels or through sources, we will hear something on the back of this ruling. But huge news there. Man City winning their case against the Premier League over sponsorship rules as a panel declares the ruling unlawful. Absolutely, interesting news there, to say the least. Joe Linton, after the game, said, not happy with the point. We are disappointed and frustrated. We could have done a few things better. The last pass and some finishing. It seems like everybody knows what the issues are. How is consistently after each game pinpointing exactly what we're talking about on this podcast. Joe Linton there, the players, they all seem to be aware of the issues. At some point, we're going to have a post-match press conference where it just goes, yeah, it was a brilliant performance, right?
Of course we are, but today is not that day. Harvey Barnes actually backed up Joe Linton's point. He said, we know that when we got opportunities, we need to take them for sure. Being clinical is part of that. To win games, you need to be clinical. The top teams do it. They're so efficient, and it's something we will keep working on. Now, when you've got a left winger coming out and saying that, that's a little bit of self-reflection, isn't it? To say, I know I'm the man that scores and assists and does little else, but I didn't do that on Saturday. So
there's always the next game. As we said there, 3 years today since the takeover. In fact, before we do that, I just want to ask you actually, Newcastle United are 7th in the Premier League with 12 points. Decent start of the season. You happy with that? Would you have taken that if someone offered you at the start of the season?
Yeah, 100%. I think, you can't really grumble with what they've done in terms of their league position, their points. They've only lost once. It's just the manner of the performances. But I think, 12 points from their opening 7, you've got to be happy with that, haven't you?
Need to score more goals, though, don't they?
Yeah.
Definitely need to be scoring more goals. It seems to have got that defensive stability back that made them such a tough team to beat, but they are lacking those goals. And, we talk about the impact of missing Alexander Isak, but he's only scored 1 goal this season. I suppose it's just the aura of having someone like him in your side.
Yeah, 100%. And you know that he will come good over time. There's been very few periods in his career where he's endured any form of sort of bad spells. The only slight worry I've got is that he went away with Sweden and played so well and scored all these goals on the last international break, and then came back to Newcastle and just didn't really look like you could transfer that form. So, but look, we can't worry about that yet. We're only 7 games.
Let's get him back first. But I'll flip that. Are you happy with 2 points from Fulham, Man City, and Everton? Would you have wanted a little bit more?
Yeah, absolutely, of course. You would probably have hoped for 6, not thinking that any of them would come against Manchester City. But look, Fulham will go down. I think it's very, very early in the season, but I think we will look back at that Fulham game as one of the poorest we're going to see Newcastle this season. Eddie Howe has spoken 2 or 3 times since that defeat about how he's trying to use that as a catalyst for better performances. They never want to go back there, etc., etc. Everton, they should have won. I think the positive that you need to take is that the performances are getting there. That's 3 games in a row where we've actually seen quite good Newcastle performances. I know the Wimbledon one was, so, but they got the win. They were never really in danger. Compare the last 3 games with the first 4, it's night and day, really.
It just seemed bizarre, because we've been on one hand a little bit critical and negative of certain aspects, but as you mentioned that they've only lost 1 game this season, and now they've got a little bit of an unbeaten run. It just seems a little bit strange that there's still so many things that we're picking at and saying this needs to improve, this needs to improve. But also, as we've said, the players and Eddie Howe are well aware of that, which is a good thing.
Yeah, and I think the reason maybe we're questioning, is it a good start? Should we be happy? Is because, as you just touched on a couple of minutes ago, we've only really sat here once this season and said that was a great performance. We can't really fault anything with it, and that was Manchester City. Every other Monday we've came here and we've grumbled about something. So they just need to find a run. They need to find a little bit of consistency. But I back them to do that.
GA says 38 million needs multiple 10 plus goals contributions a season to be considered a success. From Harvey Barnes there. Graham says Amico Arena incoming, and plenty of the comments there about other topics that we have talked about. Ryan says Isaac has had very little service so far this season, so that might be why he's not scoring the goals. Final 2 questions then before we finish with the trivia. Roger Thornton appointed to the club's board of directors that came out this morning. What do we know of him? A local man with knowledge of Newcastle United and the surrounding area. What would you read into this? Can you tell our listeners and viewers a bit more about him?
Yeah, look, it's an appointment that has very close links to the Reuben family. It's an appointment with a background in sort of properties in the city, a portfolio of sort of leisure centres in the city. So that sort of gives you the gist of who's coming in. Someone who has got a lot of experience in terms of developments, and there's one big development on the horizon at the minute, and it's the stadium. And I think that points to the fact they're getting people through the door that know about these types of moves and decisions.
Born in South Shields, head of property at Martcombe Estate Limited, an asset manager company that's focused on a portfolio of global office, retail, hotel and leisure assets for the family of Newcastle United corner Jamie Reuben. And I love this little bit of history here. Strong family links to the Magpies. His grandfather Ben was an administrator who moved from Lincoln City to relaunch Newcastle's Development Association in the mid-60s. Ben played a key role in supporting ground improvements at St James's Park over many years, including securing funding to build the existing East Stand structure, which opened in 1973.
Keeping it in the family, yeah.
Lovely little nod to history there. Bear in mind that structure was opened in 1973, probably suggests it needs a little bit of a build. And we will have a mammoth podcast tomorrow with John Gibson, all about St James's Park, and whether Newcastle should stay, whether they should go, and the potential locations they could move to, including one that not many people have thought about. So stay tuned for that, coming out Tuesday morning. 3 years since the takeover then. Progress made?
Oh, undoubtedly. I mean, I know it's easy to forget. Yes, massive progress. And just to name drop a famous Twitter account, Toon Pose, they put something out this afternoon saying pretty much the question you've asked me. And when I voted on it, 10% of people said that the club hadn't progressed, which I really, really can't understand. Sorry if you're listening or watching this and you are one of the 10%, but I'm sorry, I'm not really sure what world you are living in. It's night and day, isn't it?
I mean, considering Newcastle United were facing relegation to the Championship, there's definitely been progression.
And we've had a Champions League,
a League Cup.
Yeah.
So, 3,958 votes, 90.8% have said yes. There has been progress, which I think most will agree with. What's been the best thing thus far?
Got to be a Champions League, hasn't it?
PSG.
Got to be PSG.
Milan away, Dortmund away.
Yeah. all of them.
League Cup.
League Cup final was great, but if they'd won it, I think it would top it, but it didn't.
Where do you think they are in terms of their project? Because we always said the Champions League came too early. So now we're a year on from that. Where are they in terms of, do you think it's come too early, but it's moved them forward in terms of the revenue that came in and the experiences they had? Or do you think it maybe, I don't want to say it had a detrimental effect in terms of the progress, but, you know, where are Newcastle United in terms of their plans?
Look, I think they're in a very, very good spot. I think you look at the amount of different, what's the word?
Go on. Experiences?
No, if you look at the sort of different sectors, that's not the word, but I'm going to do that. In terms of where they are on the pitch, they've massively improved. In terms of what they've done behind the scenes with the staff, they've massively improved. In terms of what they've done with the revenue and the commercial side and the sponsorships and the fan zone, you know, apart from a similar upheaval and a below average transfer window, they've been pretty good. Yes, they regressed slightly last season in terms of finishing fourth and finishing seventh, but you know, if you'd flipped those seasons around, they would be on a very, very good path. So
I think that is the right word.
Sectors,
yeah.
yeah. Well, yeah. People know what I mean.
Yeah. It's been a good 3 years with plenty more steps to take.
Also, just before we move on, since you mentioned the stadium, we put a poll on our WhatsApp over the weekend, and about 650 of you responded, and 387 of those to 219 said that they would prefer to move to a new city centre stadium that sat 100,000 people.
Just repeat that.
So the question was, would you like to stay at St James's Park and expand it to 65,000, or would you like to move to a new city centre stadium that sat 100,000? And the new stadium had 387 votes, and stay at St James's and expand had just 219.
Interesting. I think 100,000 would be a bit too much. I think 65 to 70,000 in a brand new
But then
stadium.
saying that, we put it in our second WhatsApp channel, and the staying at St James's actually won 92 to 66. So
Probably
very,
about
very
it.
close.
What's your gut telling you?
Are you ready for me to sit on the fence? No, I was very, very set on staying at St James's. I think I was 100% ready to fight to stay at St James's, and I think now I'm 80%. I think I'm very much still, if you can expand St James's Park to a good size, if you can modernise it, renovate it, knock it down and build it again, do it. But I don't think I'll be as annoyed if they go, but I still want them to stay.
Yeah,
I'm more
60-40.
Oh, I thought you would very much be.
I was
95 to 5.
I was against leaving St James's Park.
What's changed your mind to flip it? So I mean, 60-40, yeah. You're nearly half and half there.
It's more thinking with my head rather than my heart.
Yeah.
It's looking around it and looking at how do you build a title-winning squad, and it's coming down to revenue, romanticism in terms of staying in St James's Park, ideally, but how much is it going to cost to get an extra 10,000 seats, and is it going to be cost-effective? I don't think it will be. I think moving to a city centre location in potentially the best stage in the Premier League's ever seen, increasing what you can offer, where the real markup is in terms of corporate, in terms of abroad fans, in terms of just extra seats where you can get season tickets in terms of an even bigger and better club shop, in terms of other events like boxing, like concerts,
NFL.
You know, we've got to think more than just a football match every other Saturday.
But I just to play devil's advocate, I go to some of these grounds. Like I haven't been at Tottenham Stadium, granted, but I've been to West Ham, and my God, I hate watching football.
You've
there.
got the trap.
I think they're just, but they are. There is a danger that it becomes soulless.
What about the Emirates? Have you been to the Emirates? I've not been, but
I've been to the Emirates, and as a stadium, you've got to think the Emirates is nearly 20 years old now. It's not a new stadium anymore. The Emirates is much better in terms of watching football, but the atmosphere is dreadful. Now, I don't know if that's just because it's Arsenal fans there. No offense to any Arsenal fans. But I think you do lose, or you do run the risk of it becoming a little bit soulless. And again, you know, you just touched on it there. What is the right capacity for Newcastle? Do they need more than 65,000?
No, I
70, 80, 100. What do they need? If you go to 100, I mean, I don't think they need 100.
the higher you go, the more
The more
success,
soulless it-
and
yeah.
the more success you need to maintain it being a sellout every
I
single
mean,
week.
look, people won't like to hear it, but that atmosphere against Wimbledon was awful. And I mean, the worst I've heard it in a long time. I get it's a cup game, it's midweek, it's, you know, a game that not many people really want to see, but it hasn't been fantastic this season. Unless there's a bit of needle in the game. Don't come at me. That's just my opinion. But look, I'll let you talk about this with John Gibson tomorrow. But
I think what we need to do is we need to book a game to go and see at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. Put it on expenses. It's
we're market researching for the pod. Yeah,
we'll go down and
reach bosses
and
if you're listening. Get it booked.
Because from the outside, it looks a fantastic stadium, and what they do with the pitch and everything to make.
And also, I've just been, for a story that I'm writing, I've just been looking at what Tottenham are making now. I mean, their last season at White Hart Lane in 2016, they made £45 million in terms of match day revenue. They're now making 110 this season. It's very worth it.
Graham says PFA intentions are huge on the fan base, except in the final ground decision. You can't keep everyone happy. Les says loss of revenue alone in a rebuild on the St James Park site surely isn't feasible. Build on leaders but no running tracks. Keep fans close to the pitch. We have David saying, love the show, guys. Love how you play a devil's advocate with your tin hats on. Ex-Huddersfield mag in the 80s, now a Thailand mag. Champions League campaign made us all believe again. Right, time for 20 questions very quickly.
Yeah, I thought I was doing it this week.
Oh, you can do. You've got someone.
I do have someone.
Go on
actually,
then.
But I am going to need to research them. So, but I've had someone in mind for weeks. So
for weeks.
Ever since you give me Patrick Private, I've had someone in. But I just need to get his stats up so that I don't give you any false answers.
Well, suggests there's someone around his era then, doesn't it?
No, not necessarily. It's just well, I mean, he might be, but you're just gonna have to get to. Was that a question?
No. Right. Is this person still playing?
No, he's not.
Was this person playing under Sir Bobby Robson?
No, he did not play under Sir Bobby Robson.
Did this person play prior to Sir Bobby Robson at Newcastle?
Played after Sir Bobby.
Played
Robson.
after. So right, okay.
That's number 3.
Did he play under Graham Souness?
He did play under Graham Souness.
Okay. Did he play in midfield?
He didn't.
He didn't. Okay. Did he play up front?
He didn't.
Okay, so we've got a defender under Graham Souness.
A lot quicker than I've been getting it the last couple of weeks.
Was he bought from Rangers?
Yes, he was.
Is it Mr. Broomsong?
No fun.
Is it Mr. Broomsong? That's how you do it, ladies and gentlemen. No silence, no deafening silence on the podcast, because I, like Graham in the comments, I'm belter at this game.
You've somehow seen my screen.
Nope.
There, but...
Never.
Well,
never. Thank you very much. Tune in next week, guys, for an even better 20 questions. We hope you've enjoyed today's show, the Monday show. Please do give the video a thumbs up. Please do get into the comments. I will respond to each and every single one of you who leaves a comment. Please share the podcast among your Newcastle United supporting friends and family. Head over to chroniclelive.co.uk for all the latest Newcastle United news, including the very latest on that breaking news that Man City have won their legal battle against the Premier League on sponsorship rules. And for myself now, we will see you guys next Monday.